Steve Harvey has spent nearly 4 decades building one of the most recognizable brands in American entertainment. But alongside the awards, the syndicated shows, and the reported $200 million fortune, his personal life has repeatedly become fodder for online speculation, including a wave of unverified rumors in 2023 claiming his wife, Marjorie, had been unfaithful with a member of his staff. Those claims were never substantiated, were publicly denied, and were addressed directly by a third party who said he had spoken with the couple himself. This is the full story, what's documented, and what's just noise. Steve Harvey was born Broderick Stephen Harvey on January 17, 1957, in Welch, West Virginia, a coal mining town where his father worked underground and his mother held the household together. He grew up the youngest of 5 children in a working-class family. And as a boy, he struggled with a stutter severe enough that a career built on talking for a living would have seemed like a joke to almost anyone who knew him. He didn't think it was a joke. In 6th grade, he wrote down that he wanted to be on television, and his teacher laughed at him. His father didn't. Decades later, once Harvey had made it, he began sending that same teacher a television set every Christmas, a quiet, recurring reminder that the goal he'd written down as a kid had actually happened. The family later relocated to Cleveland, Ohio, where Harvey finished high school and enrolled in college, first at Kent State and later at West Virginia University, but he left before finishing a degree. What followed was a decade of odd jobs that read more like survival than a career plan. He boxed, sold insurance, cleaned carpets, worked as a mail carrier, and took whatever work kept him afloat. He tried stand-up comedy for the first time in 1985 at a club in Ohio. And for a stretch of nearly 3 years afterward, he was effectively homeless, living out of his car, a 1976 Ford Tempo, washing up in gas station bathrooms, and getting by on roughly $50 a week. He has talked about that period publicly many times since, and it's one of the few parts of his biography that isn't contested by anyone. It happened, it lasted years, and it very nearly broke him before it made him. Harvey's break came in 1990, when he landed the hosting job on Showtime at the Apollo, a gig that put him in front of a national audience for the first time. From there, the career compounded. The Steve Harvey Show ran on the WB from 1996 to 2002. He became one of the headline acts on the Kings of Comedy tour alongside Cedric the Entertainer, D.L. Hughley, and Bernie Mac. And he built a parallel career in radio that would eventually reach millions of listeners a week. His 2009 book, Act Like a Lady, Think Like a Man, became a bestseller and later a film franchise, pulling him further into publishing and movies. The role that cemented him as a daily fixture in American living rooms, though, was Family Feud, which he began hosting in 2010 and turned into the most-watched version of the show in its history. By the early 2010s, he was hosting a syndicated daytime talk show, a game show, a radio program, and producing other formats. And in 2013, he became the first person ever nominated for 2 Daytime Emmy Awards in the same year. One for Outstanding Talk Show Host, one for Outstanding Game Show Host. He picked up a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame around the same period, a fairly literal marker of how far the arc had traveled from a Ford Tempo in a gas station parking lot. Not every high-profile moment in that stretch went smoothly. Hosting the 2015 Miss Universe pageant, Harvey announced the wrong winner live on air, naming Miss Colombia instead of the actual winner, Miss Philippines. He returned to the stage within minutes, corrected the mistake, and took public responsibility for it rather than letting the broadcast crew absorb the blame quietly. It was excruciating television, and it followed him for years in headlines and memes. But he kept hosting the pageant afterward, and it's generally cited now as much for how he handled the correction as for the mistake itself. In 2016, Harvey shifted part of his public identity toward motivational speaking, built around a widely shared message about trusting one's own talent rather than waiting for permission to pursue it, material that became the basis for his book Jump. That same year, he co-created Little Big Shots, a family-friendly showcase for young performers that put a softer, less brash version of Harvey in front of audiences than his stand-up or talk show persona. By 2017, he had folded his television, radio, publishing, and production interests into a single company, Steve Harvey Global, formalizing his shift from performer to media executive. That same year, Harvey drew significant public criticism after meeting with then-President-elect Donald Trump a meeting many commentators, particularly within the black community, questioned given Trump's rhetoric during the campaign. Harvey defended the decision at the time as an attempt at direct dialogue rather than an endorsement. Earlier that year, jokes on his show about Asian men drew backlash from advocacy groups and commentators for leaning on stereotypes. Harvey apologized publicly, saying no offense had been intended. Both moments are part of the public record and remain, along with recurring accusations from comedians Cat Williams and Mark Curry that early material on The Steve Harvey Show borrowed from Curry's sitcom Hangin' with Mr. Cooper, threads of controversy that sit alongside, not separate from, his broader career. Harvey's personal life is genuinely complicated, and unlike the affair rumors, most of it is a matter of public court record rather than speculation. His first marriage, to Marcia Harvey, produced twin daughters, Brandy and Carly, and a son, Broderick Jr. His second marriage, to Mary Shackelford, produced a son, Wynton, and ended in divorce in 2005. That divorce has generated more public conflict than either of Harvey's other marriages. Mary has publicly accused Harvey of infidelity during the marriage and, separately, alleged that Marjorie was involved with him before the divorce was finalized. The court record, however, states that the marriage ended over irreconcilable differences, that Marjorie played no role in its breakdown, and that Mary received a significant settlement, multiple properties, a lump sum payment reported at $1.5 million, and ongoing monthly support through 2009. Harvey was later granted primary custody of Wynton after Mary sent their son to live with him. In 2011, a judge found Mary in contempt for violating a gag order tied to the divorce and sentenced her to 30 days in jail. A later $60 million lawsuit she filed against Harvey, alleging emotional distress, was dismissed in 2018. Harvey has consistently denied the infidelity allegations and has maintained that his relationship with Marjorie began only after his second marriage had legally ended. Years afterward, a Texas judge publicly pushed back on Mary's characterization of the settlement, stating she had not been left financially destitute, contrary to claims she'd made. Harvey married Marjorie Bridges in 2007, a relationship he has repeatedly described as the one that reshaped his outlook on life. Marjorie brought 3 children from a previous relationship, Morgan, Jason, and Lori, into the marriage, and Harvey legally adopted all 3. Between his biological and adopted children, Harvey is the father of 7, and the extended family has grown further since. He's now a grandfather multiple times over, with grandchildren through Jason and his wife Amanda, Morgan and her husband Kareem, and his daughter Carly and her husband. For years, the family split time between Atlanta and Chicago before Harvey relocated his entire television and radio operation to Los Angeles in 2018. In August 2023, claims began circulating online that Marjorie Harvey had been unfaithful to Steve, with some versions of the rumor naming his bodyguard and personal chef. The claims traced back to a tweet that was later deleted, and from their spread through hashtags and repost chains with no documentation, no named on-record source, and no confirmation from anyone with direct knowledge of the Harveys' marriage. It followed a familiar pattern for celebrity rumors, a single unverified post, amplified by engagement rather than evidence, treated by parts of the internet as established fact simply because it spread quickly. As the story gained traction, Nigerian businessman and philanthropist Ned Nwoko publicly stated he had spoken directly with the Harveys and that the rumors were false. Steve Harvey also addressed the speculation himself at a public appearance, stating plainly that he and Marjorie were fine and asking people to stop spreading the claims. Marjorie posted her own response online about being lied about, without engaging with the specifics further. Despite the denials, the story lingered in tabloid coverage and on social media for months, resurfacing periodically whenever the couple's public appearances together became less frequent, itself a common but unreliable signal that gossip outlets often treat as confirmation of trouble. It's worth being precise about what actually exists here. An anonymous, deleted social media post, no named accuser, no documentation, a public denial from both Harveys, and a public statement from a third party saying he'd personally verified with the couple that the claims were false. That is the entire evidentiary record. Nothing about it has changed or been substantiated since. The couple marked their anniversary publicly in 2024 with no indication of separation, and they have continued to appear together since, including through their joint philanthropic work. By 2026, Harvey's net worth is widely estimated at around $200 million, built primarily on the combination of Family Feud, which reportedly pays him roughly $10 million a year, and his nationally syndicated morning radio show, reported to bring in closer to $20 million annually. Together, the two largest pieces of an income that has been estimated at roughly $40 to $45 million a year at its peak. Beyond those two anchors, his income has come for little big shots, Celebrity Family Feud, his Act Like a Lady, Think Like a Man franchise across books and film, and motivational speaking. Steve Harvey Global, formed in 2017, now oversees his production, digital media, and events businesses, including luxury travel and lifestyle experiences he runs together with Marjorie. His real estate holdings reportedly include a Beverly Hills home valued in the range of $15 million. Net worth estimates for any celebrity vary by source and aren't independently verifiable, but the roughly $150 to $200 million range is fairly consistent across the outlets that track it. Alongside the business, Harvey and Marjorie have run the Steve and Marjorie Harvey Foundation for years, with a particular focus on mentoring boys from fatherless homes and funding education, including a scholarship partnership with Kent State University. The couple also helped create the Disney Dreamers Academy with Walt Disney World and Essence Magazine, a mentorship program for high school students held annually. In 2022, Harvey and fellow comedian Chris Tucker received the inaugural Man in the Mirror Award from the Heal Los Angeles Foundation, presented by Prince Jackson, in recognition of that ongoing charitable work. It's easy to compress 3 years living in his car into a single dramatic sentence and move on, but the mechanics of that period say a lot about how Harvey operates even now. He wasn't simply unemployed, he was actively performing night after night in small clubs for little or no money, while sleeping in a car between gigs because he couldn't afford both rent and the gas money to keep chasing bookings. He has described turning back more than once, standing at the edge of quitting and going home, and choosing not to. That pattern, grinding through a format long after it stops being profitable, on the theory that the exposure eventually compounds, shows up again later in his career, most clearly in the decade he spent doing showtime at the Apollo and touring clubs before the Steve Harvey Show turned him into a name outside the stand-up circuit. The Kings of Comedy tour, which ran through the late 1990s and was later filmed by Spike Lee as a concert documentary, functioned as the real inflection point for his mainstream visibility, sharing a stage and a marketing campaign with Cedric the Entertainer, D.L. Hughley, and the late Bernie Mac gave Harvey a national audience that a sitcom on a smaller network couldn't provide on its own, and the box office success of the documentary helped push all 4 comedians into wider recognition simultaneously. From there, the radio side of his career built in parallel rather than after the fact. The syndicated morning show became a daily habit for millions of listeners well before Family Feud made him a daytime television fixture, and it's remained one of the 2 largest pillars of his income for over a decade. Because the Mary Shackelford divorce keeps resurfacing in tabloid retrospectives, it's worth laying out the sequence more plainly than it got messy. The marriage ended in 2005, and the divorce filings cite irreconcilable differences rather than any specific misconduct on either side, a standard legal designation that doesn't itself allege fault. Mary has, outside of court, made public claims that Harvey was unfaithful during the marriage, and that Marjorie was involved with him before it ended. Those are her claims. They are not what the settlement documents say. The settlement itself gave Mary multiple properties, a lump sum payment reported at $1.5 million, and monthly support that continued through 2009, and it explicitly states that Marjorie was not a factor in the marriage's collapse. Custody of their son, Winton, went to Harvey after Mary chose to send him to live with his father. The conflict didn't end with the settlement. In 2011, a Texas judge held Mary in contempt of court for repeatedly violating a gag order tied to the divorce, speaking publicly about the case, and making disparaging remarks about Harvey, and she served a 30-day jail sentence as a result. Years later, She filed a $60 million civil suit against Harvey alleging emotional distress. That case was dismissed in 2018. Separately, a judge pushed back publicly on Mary's characterization of the settlement's financial terms, stating on the record that she had not been left destitute, as she had suggested in public comments. Harvey, for his part, has never wavered from denying the infidelity claims and has consistently maintained that his relationship with Marjorie only began once the second marriage had already ended legally. None of this makes either side's private account of the marriage fully knowable from the outside. That's true of most divorces. But the parts of the story that are actually documented in court records are more measured than the version that circulates in recap videos. The affair rumor that attached itself to Marjorie in August 2023 is worth examining not just for what was claimed, but for how it spread, because the pattern is common enough to be worth naming. It began with a single social media post, not a report, not a source with a name, not a publication with editorial standards. And that post was later deleted by whoever posted it. Once hashtags picked it up, the claim spread through repost volume rather than corroboration. Each new post citing the rumor functioned as evidence to some viewers simply because there were now more posts,